Today we're speaking with Josh Findlay. He's a mortgage broker, content creator, and multifamily real estate expert with over $1 billion in transaction through his firm. He's a founder of BLD Financial. He has 14 staff, and he's been in business since 2019. So his podcast, BLD Financial Podcast, is definitely something you want to check out if you want to learn more about how to finance multifamily properties, as he specializes in acquisition, debt restructuring, and stabilization for multifamily assets. Josh, welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
So, Josh, you're at a really cool stage in your life. You're scaling your company. You're getting ready to get married here at the end of the year. So you got a lot going on in your life, which is phenomenal. And you started just as an individual mortgage agent, just getting their license. So take us back to the very beginning of actually getting your mortgage license. And then what was it that said, you know what, I'm going to actually scale my business up?
Yeah, becoming a mortgage agent, I don't know if anybody just like wakes up saying, I want to be a real estate agent or I want to be a mortgage agent. You just find yourself kind of in the industry. I went to university. I actually wanted to be a police officer. Did everything I had to do to become a police officer, and I applied. And I think I was 21, 22 at the time, and they said, get some life experience. So I had to go get some life experience. Got into some sales and realized I loved helping people, but the whole salary situation and growth situation just wasn't for me. And I had an opportunity to kind of get into being a mortgage agent assistant, and that really opened my eyes to kind of a different paradigm about how wealth was created. We're always taught work for a dollar, not how to create a dollar. And the idea of wealth generation allowed me to be able to pursue this path. Realistically, got in like everybody else. I think the stars were kind of aligned. We were 2021, like right around COVID, like right before COVID. My business partner and I, we got into it, and everything kind of the stars kind of aligned. We had the hottest real estate market that ever existed. We had like 0% rates.
Hmm.
And we started shooting content at a time when nobody was really investing in shooting content. So, we started shooting YouTube videos and teaching people all about debt structuring. And some people say you need a little bit of luck, and all those things started to align. And our first year in business was kind of a major success, and we really kind of dialed in to help real estate investors buy their first 10 properties. Was kind of the shtick, how to understand debt structuring and how you could get into acquiring and using strategies to buy real estate.
Josh, that's a phenomenal start. I'm curious, have you ever looked back and said, I wish that I would have become a police officer? Or do you ever wish that, I'm going to make a transition now that you've started your business?
Never. No.
Yeah.
I think, I was devastated. Like, since I was a 3-year-old and I wanted to be a police officer, and
Right.
everything I had was into this like persona of becoming this thing, and I applied and I got turned down multiple places. And when that door closed, I felt like my world was like just a mess. And you don't realize when you're so young that when a door closes, another one opens. But if you're so focused on the door closing, you're not going to focus on what's ahead of you. And looking back now, it's a blessing, complete blessing that it happened. But everything does fundamentally happen for a reason.
Josh, I think that encouragement, it will help a lot of the listeners out there, because I think that happens on a regular basis. Is you've been working your whole life towards something, and then it's just like that door closes. That happened to me, actually. I was playing hockey my whole life, and I remember I was playing in the Central Hockey League down in Texas, and I walked in one day. We were 6 weeks down there. I just was married, and Joanna flew down with me. We set everything up in our apartment. We spent all of our wedding savings. This is a good tip for you. Any wedding savings, don't spend on an apartment when you're not living in a spot that you could be there long term. All the spices and the rugs and the desk and everything. We spent everything. Everything was perfect. And I walked in one day, and the coach called me in and said, "Hey, we put you on waivers." I walked in, and my stuff was in a garbage bag. So we flew back, and like, that's all I knew was hockey. And it was like, what am I going to do? I was like this big unknown. And then Joanna said one day, she's like, you don't have to keep playing hockey if you don't want it. And that's where everything changed. It was like, okay, real estate, I want to get in. And that's when I started. But I think a lot of listeners can resonate with that. It's like, I'm going towards one thing, and it's just you keep on. It's one thing if you go up against a challenge to overcome it, but if it's very clear that a door is closing on you, like for you with being a police officer, it's like, listen, you got to get more experience, and it's clear. Use that as a opportunity to go through another door. And it's interesting because looking back on it now, and it's the same with me. I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad my stuff was in a garbage bag and it was that like impactful, because from there I started in real estate and never looked back.
Well, I think it's something you'll never forget, like, when something's so fundamental to, like, your core of who you are and it stops you at such a young age, like, really sets you back, and you have one of 2 d choices. You either are gonna go, push forward, or, you're gonna let it affect you, and, the guy who said, "I coulda made it, but, I got a bum shoulder," right? Like,
Yeah.
you wanna be the other guy. You wanna push forward and find that, and when you're so young, it's so difficult to wrap your head around that concept. But the ones who push through, life is. We'll get into it, but life is a journey, man, and you're gonna have those stops throughout every single aspect of your business.
Mm, yeah, it's forced growth, right? When you go through that hardship, it forces you to grow, to improve, and get better. But you're right. Like when you're going through it, it's like this sucks. It's not good for me, and all the rest of it. So that's very cool to know that was the beginning, and that was your life. You thought it was your life purpose, but then another purpose opened up, and I mean, look at you now. Um, I'm curious. So, what you did when you started, lead gen is a really big thing when you start any business. And so, you took a very unique approach with the content creation. You saw the overall market, you saw a gap in the market, and then you executed on that to be able to provide a lot of value. And I use that as a way to be able to attract potential investors. Or another way to look at it is like straight up lead gen. Was that something that came natural to you? Did somebody tell you to do that at that time, or was that just something that you kind of stumbled upon?
Yeah, no, it's always the most difficult part when you get into business is how am I going to get my leads and how am I going to be able to close deals, because leads are revenue, and like, you have to continue to repeat the process. And I tried it all. I had referral sources, like, realtor referral sources. I didn't necessarily like it because somebody else's, decisions or success was based on mine. And then I tried paying for leads, and I realized that, paying for leads, you're always gonna be fishing, and you're always gonna be, like, compared to a rate shopper, at least in my industry. They're always looking for the lowest rate. So, it's a funny story, everybody probably knows who Gary Vee is, and at the time, Gary's screaming at the phone saying, "You're early, just start." And I'm like, "I've had social media since I was, like, 12, like, I'm not early, this is." And then I said, "You know what? We're gonna shoot a video." And, I realized something, by accident. We shot our first video, and the video was, an informational video. I look back at it now and just laugh, like, it was terrible.
Yeah.
But we take a look at that video, and I realized that business is like a magnet. If you want to give, it's like a negative, and negative is a positive. You push all of the information out, and it's going to help somebody, but you give it away for free, and you continue to push all that free information and knowledge. It all comes back to you. It continuously comes back in a loop of knowledge, and like, the clients, especially in our industry, who are trying to understand complex strategies, especially in investing or like acquiring buildings. This stuff isn't stuff that you're going to be taught in school, and it's definitely not stuff that's unless you're in private banking, your private banker isn't going to take the time to explain it to you. So we realize that there's a massive gap in the industry of people looking for information, and we decided to become that. And it wasn't necessarily like clear to us until we made the video, and then we had an overwhelming amount of people reach out to us. We were like, "Wow, this is crazy. How many people really need this information?" So we doubled down on it. And at the time, just for anybody listening, like, investing in leads is the most difficult thing when you're first getting into business. And I had to invest in social media, and an investment in social media of like actually doing it professionally. So you got to get like a team of people to shoot the content, to post the content, to have a strategy around it. Like, you're talking more money than probably it was sound at the time. It took a major risk to be able to invest that much money in the social media, but that risk turned into an unbelievable level
Mm.
of leads. And we've never actually looked for leads ever again. We never had any calls, never had cold calls. It's always just being warm based off of the information we're pushing out.
I love how you said business is a magnet. If it goes out and you push it out for free, it's going to come back to you. That's a really, really cool way to put it. And I think a lot of people, it's like they get this idea of I'm giving everything for free. I'm doing all this work for nothing, and then others are saying, "Hey, listen, why don't we charge for this? This is like that good." Do you still think that giving free information and focusing on giving everything away and spending all the money do you still subscribe to that, or is it like what, charging is actually better?
I give every single piece of information I have away,
Yeah.
all of it, because what we do for a living can't necessarily be done without a license.
Mm.
Complex debt structuring is more than just understanding a concept, and I think the people who are looking to deploy capital, whether it's serious multifamily development or construction, you need a level of understanding for the debt you're about to take on. So, like, what this does is it's a precursor to the understanding of taking on the debt, and you still need somebody to help you transition and, like, acquire the debt, whether it's shopping it or structuring it in a certain way. So we found that, providing the mid-market, which is where we play in, with the information allows our clients to be more informed, for the decisions they're making. So, we firmly believe in just giving out all the information.
Oh, that's so good. You're I bet people that reach out to you are saying, "Okay, I'm ready to go. I've
It's
watched
all
all
the
your
information.
videos and like, where do I sign?"
That's right.
Yeah, so smart. Because I mean, most businesses would, even if they're really good, a lot of them don't even educate their clients, right? But they'll say when they come on, then they'll educate them. They have, the full presentation and it's all broken down, but they do it one on one only after they come in. Your approach is give it all away for free and they're going to be really educated up front. But then when they reach out to you, then they're basically ready to go. So you're basically taking, it's like a much more, was a proactive approach to educating. You're going to need to do it eventually to do a really great job. It's just you're doing it unconventionally compared to the other businesses out there.
People are only gonna do business with you if they know you, like you, and trust you. And in this business, the concepts are pretty difficult either to understand, or you need to kind of absorb a lot to figure out how to do this properly. So we find that the content that we consistently push out allows people to get to know us, get to like us, and get to understand the concepts that they need to be able to make a decision.
Oh man, that's so good. So okay, so here's the big objection that a lot of entrepreneurs would have. It's like, listen, I'm not good at video. I just don't. Um, what is that kind of first step for? Were you always naturally good in front of the camera, or was it something that you had to work towards?
Oh no, yeah, and definitely we worked towards it. I remember the first time shooting a video and like trying to get like a teleprompter and like reading it really slowly, and uh it's ultra difficult to put yourself in front of the camera, but I think as you become an expert at what you do and you start to understand that you fundamentally understand all the things you're saying, and the people who are going to be watching your content are going to be trying to learn from these things. It's less of is somebody going to like me and more of is it just correct. So once we got through the whole, you don't really care about people judging you, or there's always going to be the people, oh, look at this guy shooting content, but you get past that after video number 2, and then
Mm.
you realize that, once business starts to come in, or once you start to have some traction, or people calling you asking questions, you realize this is something that really sticks, and I think it can happen for all businesses. It's just a really difficult thing for people to do because it's the consistency around booking the things and spending the money on the production. But if I was gonna go back and talk to Josh, 7 years ago, I'd say double down, do it twice as hard.
That's really good. And you'd recommend getting the pro equipment, the pro outfit when you first start at the beginning, or is it a matter of kind of starting kind of with what you have and then kind of work up to that? What would be the approach that if you went back to early Josh, would that be the same approach that you take, or would you maybe start sooner and just maybe not go in with all the production side of it?
I think that the tools we have now versus when I was, 6 years ago, are completely different. We have AI clipping tools now. We have the ability to be able to create content very quickly. If I was strapped for cash, I'd do it myself. Like your phone probably has a 4K video recorder, like a camera on it. You can honestly shoot it by yourself. It's not something overly complicated. I do think that if you're looking to grow a business, you can't become a professional video editor. You can't become a professional post planner or understand all the strategies. It's changing so fast that, you need to focus on what's your time worth. And unfortunately, you're making those decisions before your time is worth anything, right? Like you have to become an expert. So maybe pay somebody to actually do it, and then focus on becoming an expert at what you do.
Mm.
It'll eventually pay off over time on investing in the professional to do it and letting you have the highest ROI in your time.
So good, so good. Now, which channels would you recommend to start if you're, service professional or just, there's so many different platforms. Would you say pick three? Would you pick one? Would you go in all of them, or what would be your approach if you were to start again?
We find that people go to learn and absorb longer form content at YouTube. If you're always going to go in and say, "How do I fix this thing?" or a tutorial on how to change my spark plugs, it's the same thing. Like how do I go about investing in Canadian real estate? So they're going to go watch like a long form video on YouTube. So if you're looking to create informational content, I'd say YouTube is absolutely the place you want to be. If you want to get in front of people, you got to be on Instagram or TikTok. I don't do TikTok, but Instagram. Yeah, I had my media team explained it to me one time about how we are transitioning and going into a more digital economy. And as you can see, with everything you do, everything is online now. That isn't something that's going to go away. Your business brand is going to be solidified, and eventually, I think what's going to happen is these platforms. It's not going to be free for businesses to be able to post this stuff. Eventually, it's going to be so integral to society that all businesses will have no choice but to be on it. So, take advantage of it while we can to create a brand that is free to currently post on, because it's not something that might be around forever.
That's great. And I think you saying that you've never had to advertise for business with doing over 1 billion in transaction volume says everything. Just by starting with this one, doing a great job for your clients, getting referrals and building out from there, but not having to spend dollars in lead gen says I'm going to go all in on that as being a very smart business tactic to build it, generate leads and grow a business effectively.
It's a lagging indicator, so it does take time in the investment. So you know how like you'd make a cold call, and the cold call would be like, "Hey, I want to do this thing." You're like, perfect, I'll set up a meeting. Whereas content is very much like maybe like 6 months or a year of consistently creating the content and getting it professionally out to people in front of them, so they understand that you know what you're doing. It's a little bit of a longer fuse, but again, yeah, best strategy.
For sure. Okay, so we have the lead gen part of it. So now you start to grow, you're doing business, and then you need staff. So you have 14 staff right now. Uh, Take us through that very first hire. And so, was that scary for you? I mean, like a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't take that leap. And I remember my first hire, I was like, oh my goodness, if I don't hire somebody for 6 months, I'm going to save this amount of money. And then I went down the path of, uh, well, if I hire somebody, I can actually let them go if it doesn't work out within 3 months. And that actually helped me. I'm like, this isn't a 1 year commitment. This is like a 3 month commitment. And then we hired somebody and it didn't work out. We transitioned and then we hired that next person. We took another step and then we went from like 38 sales to 100. And then I was like all in at that point. But I'm curious, how did you work your way through that very first hire when, you and your partner were just too busy to do the things that needed to get done?
I love this question because this question comes up with my agents sometimes of when to hire your first assistant. And the answer is it will never be clear to you because you will always be counting dollars and cents. You will always count the cost of the human being versus the more efficient that your business can operate without you doing the tasks, because you can't quantify the tasks you already do with the business you're about to get in the door. Our first hire was really, really funny. It's a funny story. So, um, kinda started COVID kinda thing, business started getting really busy. I was like, "I don't know if I can hire somebody full time, like, I don't know if I can cover a salary. This is crazy, I'm getting enough business now that I don't know, like, I don't have enough time in the day. Ho What are we gonna do?" And we decided to hire somebody, and her name was Lisa. She was really good. She was like a mom. She had past experience. She was great. But I had made like one of the biggest mistakes I was ever gonna make in business is I said, I will pay you per file. And this is before we started doing lots of business. So we commit to paying her a certain amount per file, and obviously our business goes from like zero to hero. We go like hundreds of transactions
Yeah.
from like when I hired her till like the end of the year, and I we were paying her. I think she made over $200,000 that year as an assistant, and obviously we were like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Like she takes time off us, we can go and hire more people and whatnot. But we made a pact to ourselves that we that it's kind of like a dumb tax or like a learning tax. Like, you can afford the person. It's just you have to quantify your time because if you don't understand the value of your time, you're going to give up too much for hiring your first person. So understand, it's all about you and your ability to actually go bring in and generate the more revenue. And anybody listening, don't hire somebody on piecework for your first your first hire.
Yeah. It reminds me of the story when we were building our inside sales team. We got the comp structure wrong. It was like, similar where we were paying. It was too much based on the volume. We just didn't get it right. And we actually had to, it was like, if we keep growing this way, this isn't going to be viable moving forward for the business. And we actually had to transition it. And I remember we had three or four guys actually get up. There was only four or five at the time, get up and actually walk out. They all walked out at the same time. And there was one guy left that stayed. His name was Zach. And I was like, oh my goodness, our whole department, like this whole vision we had for building the business out, I knew it needed to happen, but like they all walked out. And so I spent like a number of weeks driving to the office and sitting down with the Zach with their inside sales rep. And I was fielding calls with him to keep that intact until we were able to build that back up. And it's interesting, Zach is now our head of our inside sales team when we've grown in scale. But I'll never forget that loyalty, but I'll never forget, just like you'll never forget that, when you're creating a pay structure, you got to go down the path of, okay, what happens when we blow this thing up? And is this sustainable or not? And then on the flip side, is this actually going to be motivating enough for the other person? And so getting an advisor, I think it would be, just to run it by, say, here's what I'm thinking. Somebody smart is probably a good idea. What would you do now, looking back on it? Would you, to be able to like maybe stress test what you're going to offer your first assistant?
I wouldn't doubt myself now. I think when you have when you're in business for so long and you taking the risks and you consistently know it's all on you,
Yeah.
you just know that you're gonna figure it out. But like when you're first in the business and you're making the really tough decisions and you don't have a bunch of stacked wins, it's really easy to look back and say, "Man, this might not work. I just quit my job to become a mortgage agent or to become a realtor. I got no commission. Like it's all commission. I'd have no guaranteed." It's so easy to look back and have doubt. I'd say, like, don't have doubt because, you're in the business because you know you can do it. Just you have to commit to something. You're always gonna be investing with like with a wall in front of you. You're never gonna see the opportunity or see the return on the other side because it's impossible. Like, investing doesn't work like that. You have to take the risk to be able to get the thing.
Yeah, 100%. And you took action. I mean, that's the thing that I look back on that is like, well, at least we took action, we learned, but it was like, oh geez, like that was not a good move. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, bottom line is, even if you make a big mistake, it's like, I picked up this book is called They Can't Eat You. And it was interesting because they talk about in business, like when you make a mistake, it's not like you're in the wild, in the safari where, you make a mistake as an animal, you're going to get eaten. And in business, I mean, financially, I guess you could go bankrupt, which is kind of another form of that. But the bottom line is you get to start again and you do it again. Right. And so I think putting in context like that, at the end of the day, failure is not true failure. The only time you really fail is if you maybe give up. But if you don't take that first step, you'll never know what that was truly like. And you learn as you go. A lot of these things, it's like the plan could be elaborate and perfect, but you're going to need to tweak that plan along the way in big ways.
I realize that nobody actually knows what they're doing, and most people are guessing. Business is just get up every day, put your best foot forward, fix all the problems you have going on, and have some sort of goal that's readjusted every 6 months.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so you make that hire, you start to blow it up, you start to scale and grow. What were some of the growing pains that you had to overcome as you were growing and scaling to a point of like 14 staff for now?
Yeah, I mean, we had an agent model, so kind of trying to figure out the model. First of all, it was kind of taking time to teach people how to do what you're doing, which obviously has its challenges as well. I think when you're young, you want your name on the wall, and you want this big brokerage, and you want to become kind of quote unquote the man. And I think you realize that the business is different than that. We ended up going through having to get a bit more office space, which is a lot like hiring your first person. Always committing to big the monthly payments is something interesting. One of the growing pains was also just figuring out what kind of boss you want to be. When I got out of school, I had to get a job in sales. My boss, I didn't necessarily like my boss. He wasn't overly kind to me. He didn't really care about like what I wanted. Blamed ambition on being a millennial. And I remember saying like I'm gonna be a really good boss. So like if my staff want to take care of their kids, or I'm not gonna be somebody who's gonna be overbearing. Like your job is your job, and I kind of took the responsibility of giving very clear outlines of what your job is. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to micromanage you. You can do it from home. You could do it on Sunday. As long as it's done, kind of thing. And that was kind of the growing thing, was becoming leaving the young entrepreneur where it's got to be so regimented, and it's got to be so like I got to be the boss and do this thing, versus like growing somewhere where people want to work. That was kind of the biggest like shift, and it happened, I'd say, about 3 years in.
That's good. That's really good. It's interesting that what I found through the years is I've gone through that transition as well, where it's like you take your lunch break at this time, you start back at this time, you start at this time, and you leave at this time, and it's all very regimented. And I realized actually through COVID, we had to transition some people off the team. Uh, this is when COVID hit. Like we weren't sure what was going to happen, and we actually had to lay off 15 people, but we kept all of our A players, and the ones that were like these guys were. You want to make sure to hold on to them. And that next month, it was sales were down in half, as you know. And what ended up happening was that following month, it was like a banner month. And what was interesting is we did more sales, the best month ever, with 15 less staff. And I didn't need to micromanage. That was the thing, because they were working from home and we weren't micromanaging the same way. And that was like a really good lesson for me as well. It was like when you get really great people, if you give them outcomes to be able to hit, like you don't need to micromanage so much how they do it, or the time that they're doing it at the end of the day. The A players, they have their self accountability to deliver on the result, and so you don't need to micromanage. Their standard is so high. They love, like in school, they love report card time because it actually gave them a scorecard on how well they were doing. It's the same in business, right? You get the A players, they want to be held to high standards, but they hold themselves to high standards at the same time. So I totally agree that that's like it's a really cool experience thing that you transition as the years go by.
I go to work every day to have freedom. I go to work every day so because I like my job and I want to be here. And you realize that people who get up every day and they go to work for you, they're building your vision. They look to you for guidance, and but you also I realize I want them to want to be here. My business operates way better when they want to be here, when they answer the phone and they're like, hey, they're happy, and the clients like to talk to them, and they're joking and having fun, and they want to go to work. And the most important part of being an employer really is having the people want to get up every day to make your vision happen. And it kind of gets lost at the start because you're worried about getting business and then making everything so perfect. The older I get, the more I realize that's not it. When you want to grow something, it grows from the inside out.
Yeah, I totally agree. What are some things that you do to get your team excited about growing the vision?
We give them some ability to be able to kind of work from like when they want. So, if you kind of have like your files or you have like the things you're responsible for, like if you want to work from home, if you want to work from the office, I don't really have a cap on days off. None of my staff abuse it. If you need a week off, you need a week off. Um, and you can go when you want, where you want, with who you want. There's no like, everybody does come in at 9 o'clock, but if you need to come in at 10 o'clock because your kid needs to go to do this thing, like, it's very much a responsibility thing, as you said previously. Your responsibility is your job, and you take your job very seriously, and I take my job very seriously. I think everybody who works with us, they've had other jobs before. Like I've had a job before, and you dread go to work. It's like I don't want anybody dreading to come into work. So we just
Yeah.
make it more of like a we're working together towards something versus you work for me or like
Mm.
something like that. Like we're you know, most of our people, I would say everybody's happy.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something for sure. It's like one of the big three. There's like autonomy, purpose, and then mastery. I found with A players that if you can get those three right, like you're going to have a very attractive place for A players to come into. And so that freedom part of it, the autonomy that you're giving the agents as well. And then I know you work really hard. So from a leadership standpoint, I totally agree. It's like they're following you and your pace that you're setting, and your leadership and your ability to make a big enough vision so that their vision can come true within that scope that you're providing. And if you're kind of putting constraints on them, that's not something that A players really love. So I can see how you have your 14 staff and you're growing, how moving forward you're providing that platform to go to the next level.
We also have a comp structure that allows them to be able to get paid based off of like targets as well. Like when I close a deal, they close a deal kind of thing. Like you answer, and we found that like compensating them on a per deal basis or like on a certain metric basis, it they want to answer their emails on Sunday, or like I'll be watching maybe TV at like 11 o'clock and I'll see emails go out, or I'll hear like, oh, I had a phone call with so and so on Saturday afternoon. I can't believe you guys, your staff answered the phone. Like it's amazing. They called me and set up a time. So like it's the above and beyond care that allows us to be able to have the clientele that we do. And when we realized that you don't need 1,000 clients, you need like 15 clients who are operating, at a high level. We realize the lifetime value of a client is just exponential.
Especially with an investor, right? You can do more and more and more. Whereas, like you get, like say, single family, they're doing it once, every say 7+ years. Uh, you're getting that repeat business. I'm sure a lot more in the commercial space. Is that accurate?
When we target mid market, we target between essentially two to $50 million, and like the guys who are operating or girls who are operating this level, you didn't stumble into this, so you have a portfolio, you have probably like 5 or 6 things happening at once, and the beautiful thing about it is that the banks shortcomings is the reason why we have a business because we can care, we can understand, and we can take a look at the entire portfolio and where you're at with each different project and how you're going to get from point A to point B and keep things stabilized and have your entire like group of partners around you to insulate you and like grow. We found that the average real estate investor in this space is about 2.5 transactions per year. You're going to buy, you're going to refi, you're going to buy every single year because when you realize that the debt markets, when you're operating at this level, you're borrowing capital, and that borrowed capital is being used to fund additional investments. Well, the borrowed capital has a burn rate on it. Like you're borrowing the money, so you have to deploy it. It's a kind of a vicious, never-ending cycle of having to invest in real estate all the time.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And what a great business model as well to get into. You know, right from you structuring it from a lead gen standpoint, giving away information, having the investors be attracted to you, and then doing a great job, and then they just keep repeating. That's like a phenomenal model to go after. Um, I'm curious. You're doing a huge amount of volume at this point. How has your day to day changed? Like some of the main things that you do now, how would that change from when you started in the business?
I used to do everything. I was very micromanaged, like, coming from, a regular job. I didn't know any better. So, when I was younger, I thought I could just do it all. I thought that if I micromanaged and figured out every single piece and I just worked 80 hours a week, every single week, I could just do it all by myself and it would always get done perfectly. And then I realized that that absolutely wasn't the case, and you had to trust people to uh, to allow them to be able to take those things off your plate. It's kind of like the whole like hiring somebody. You got to trust that person, and you got to take the jump to do it. So I no longer focus on things that don't make me revenue. And when I first got in the business, somebody explained this to me as green tasks, which are money making tasks, and then there's red, yellow tasks, which are like non money making tasks but have to be done, and then red tasks, which you shouldn't do. And those tasks change based off of where you're at in your business. And the highest return of my business is to be client facing and to do business development. And something else is underwrite. So one of the most important aspects of being a multifamily broker is to understand the debt structure you're giving to your clients. And we kind of realize that we're fundamentally different. We're not just sales guys. Like I make sure that all the people who are client facing, whether you're an agent or not, you understand the debt structure. So you have that the understanding of advisory level to your client. So I still underwrite the files, but the majority of the back and forth with the lender and whatnot, it's all taken care of. So my job is just make sure my clients are happy, make sure I can understand where they're at in their process, take in any new deals, underwrite files, kind of like a surgeon, right? Everybody goes and preps everything, and then he goes in and makes a cut, and then they go sew it up after. I'm trying to get my business to that point where it's basically just go in, make the cut, figure it out, and then my team just finishes it.
Yeah, it's really advanced that you have identified that client facing business development is something that you still, it's like your highest and best use for your time, and then the underwriting as well. I think with all business people, as you grow in scale, you constantly got to be asking yourself. And one of the best ways is just to sit with a pad and a pen and say, hey, listen, like, am I, what I'm doing today, is this my highest and best use? And there's a really good book called Buy Back Your Time. I'm not sure you might have read it, by Dan Martell, and he talks about this idea of like hiring your, we'll say, the bottom 50% of activities that you're doing, and hire somebody to actually take that over. And so you're hiring somebody not to just make more money or grow the business, but to buy back more of your time so that you can do those higher producing activities like business development and client facing as well. So is that something that was always a main focus for you, or is this now, like, as you've hired more and more, are you able to spend more time on that now than when you first started, or are you finding that it's uh, you're able to double down more on your business development now than you did when you actually first started?
It was always apparent, but never comfortable. It was always out of delegating after you've made the hire. So like you hire somebody, then they can take on a little bit more, and you're like, oh, I got a little bit extra time here, okay. And then they take on a little bit more, and then obviously they need to you need to hire another person, and then that person takes on a little bit more, and you realize there's certain tasks that generate you much more revenue than other tasks, and it was never comfortable. It was a lot like just hiring somebody for your first time. It's um, you always have doubts. You always have doubts that you're supposed to be doing something, or you need to do this thing to be able to be successful. Your clients are going to care if you do this and not that, and it's all most of the doubts that you have are all in your head. It's not something that is actually real. It's something that you tell yourself to keep control of the business cycle that you're in.
Yeah, right on. How about for habits and routines on a daily basis? Have you implemented anything through the years that have really helped you step up your productivity?
I believe you got one body. Like, you got to take care of it. So, physically fit. I go to the gym every day. I started going to the gym in the morning about a year and a half ago. I used to go at night, and then I realized that there was an infinite level of excuses at 5 o'clock when you have your phone ringing and, and there's a million things to do. So I had to make the choice to go in the morning. But everything like your success in your business comes directly from how you're feeling. And if you don't feel like top of the world, you don't feel like you're feeling good, it's going to affect your mind. And I honestly believe that your perspective on things is the only reason whether you're going to succeed or not. So I deal with personally just staying fit. It allows me to be a happier human being. Allows me to go to work feeling like $1 million in the morning. You come to work not feeling tired and lethargic. I probably drank too much coffee, but other than that, I don't. Just take care of yourself. Oh, you know what? Actually, there is something.
Good.
I realized that you really need to step back and do the things you love. Like I love to go, to concerts or live music. And I always used to make an excuse how I was too busy or like I'll just do it later or whatnot. And you don't get the same level of like enjoyment out of things because you're working so hard. So, either go on the vacation or even if it's just like a mini vacation, like 4 days, take the time and smell the roses. We're not going to be young forever. And if you're successful and you're starting a business and you're doing well, uh, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Enjoy a little bit of the fruits of your labor that you're doing it because there's something about seeing an old guy in a Ferrari and being like you deserve to be there, but seeing a young guy in a Ferrari or somebody who's living happiness as they're in their younger years. Like there's something amazing about to see that. So don't always get so locked in on tomorrow. Like take the time and enjoy it.
Mm, that's such great advice, and it's probably welcome from a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening. It's funny when I look back at all the travel that I did with the family, and we spent, we always invested in traveling. That's the way I saw it. I don't regret one trip, not even close. Like I would not trade that dollar, or maybe it's even like a 10x of that dollar for that experience. And so that's it. There's a good reminder, as a year to year basis that, smell the roses along the way because you're right. I mean, tomorrow's not guaranteed, right?
Absolutely.
So to transition now a little bit, entrepreneurs, they can invest in many, many different things. I mean, there's so many things that they can invest in. And, there's lots of, pitfalls and, things that they got to watch out for. For us, we actually created a sister company, Affairs Capital, and when we look at properties, we're actually buying these multifamily properties down south. We have to look at like 300 of them to find one. So it's like there's so many options, even within an asset class as well. So I'm curious, what advice do you have for listeners to help them decide in what to invest in, especially in today's market where there's a lot of uncertainty and there's so many options that are available today?
I'm a I'm a firm believer in investing in tomorrow. I think the highest asymmetric upside is the newest thing, whether that's AI, whether that's crypto, whether that is um, whatever it might be, longevity technology. I think that if you're going to try to make a serious life changing return, that's not going to be in your bonds or your S&P 500. I think that you need to look at tomorrow. You need to look at the major issues that the world is facing today, and understand that those issues are going to be fixed with some technology that is fundamentally going to change the world. We're entering a very interesting time in history where the next 10 years is going to see more growth than the last 100 for AI. And that's going to change, fundamentally everything that we know, from like, societal structure, capital, markets, everything. So like, if you're looking to invest, I'd say like, take a look at where the world is going to be in the next 2 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years. Listen to some of the smartest minds out there right now. I listen to VC guys. Go listen to, the CEO of Google and hear what they're talking about and hear how like what their visions for tomorrow are because they're the ones building it. So I'm a firm believer in investing in tomorrow's tech and tomorrow's vision because I think it's going to happen a lot faster than what we saw over the last decade or two.
Well, just looking back at the internet, right? When that first came out, it was like, oh, that's cool. We can go online. But look how that changed the world. But AI, I totally agree. Like AI it's here. It's happening now, and like I'm on ChatGPT pretty much every day, and so it's changed how I work, and it's only getting smarter. It's like what happened 3 months ago and what I plugged in. Now it's like it's spitting out full like infographics and building out presentations. Like, holy geez, this is going quick. And then you start to see, okay, cars, automated cars, you start to see like they're out there without drivers right now. And so I think it was Mark Cuban recently. I saw a post. He said if he I think a 15 or 16-year-old today, he said I'd be spending 100% of my time learning about AI. And I just it's changing everything as we speak, and it's you nailed it. I mean, it's going to happen a lot quicker than we think, and the curve is growing so fast as well.
Well, exponential.
Yeah,
You have some of the smartest people on earth that are going to get phased out. You have doctors. Your AI is going to know every single disease and have read every single paper and be able to digest everything, all the cases that have ever happened for very specific things, and scan you and say like this is based off all the information in the world, this is exactly what it is. Or like legal professionals. Nobody is really going to be insulated from this, other than maybe the developers who can develop the actual code for it. But I think it's gonna be, yeah, fundamentally changing. It's exciting, it's scary.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I'll have a job in 10 years, but, I think if you're looking towards the future and you have some capital, investing in tomorrow is probably the best bet.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. I heard that the skill set of adaptability is going to be much greater than the ability to learn and memorize things. So memorization, so adaptability, that's going to be the key skill set moving forward. Because as things are changing, if you can change with the times and improve and grow with that, that will be a key item, I think, to sustain, we'll just say to stay alive moving forward. Because otherwise, what I heard in the next about 5 years, like 30% of the of employees out there are actually going to be like unneeded, and so
Yeah.
they're going to need to transition to something else. So keeping that mind of adaptability, I think, will be very helpful through that.
I think that as business owners, it's in our nature to be adaptable. I think that as like millennials too. I don't know if you're at the tail end of that, but like millennials, we're like the generation who can still catch it. Now the generation after us is like I have no idea what this is. Like I don't want to do it. But we grew up with the technology. And I think that as entrepreneurs at this age, the ability to adapt to it and understand it and use it for your business. Yes, it will make things more efficient, but with that comes opportunities. A lot like the internet was, gonna take over the world. Like all the things that came from the internet, your idea will be able to manifest like that with AI. So, it's gonna be I'm looking forward to the future.
Yeah, right on. uh, Next question is, what's the biggest challenge? So you work with a lot of investors, and primarily in the Ontario market. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing them face in today's market? Because there's a lot of uncertainty out there, right? What's kind of a reoccurring challenge that seems to be coming up?
Yeah, I mean, so I focus predominantly on multifamily. I'd say 50% of my business is probably in Alberta, another 50% here in Ontario. Um, our clientele have shifted a lot of capital to markets that are more flexible to landlord tenant laws. I'm sure like the reason why you're in the States right now, you have control over your asset. And I think that that's kind of the name of the game over the last few years is have control over your investment. So in Ontario, it obviously becomes much more challenging to be able to stabilize assets. We're seeing a lot of capital move to markets where that isn't necessarily a challenge. And you also have an old guard. You have the stock that's in Ontario right now. It's all 70s, three-story walk-up, needs a lot of work. Needs a lot of CapEx, and the amount that these 75-year-old Italian guys want for their three-story walk-ups versus realistically what people are willing to pay
Yeah,
just hasn't come here yet. So, I think we're gonna somehow meet in the middle at some point, but opportunistic capital is still firing. There's no the guys who have lots of capital, they weren't making offers with the 17 people back in 2022 were making, ridiculous offers per unit basis. They're making offers now on, on assets that make sense. And as prices continue to compress and then maybe cap rates expand a little bit, hopefully the bond yields come down. I think you're going to see more people and take on more generational, investments. Like smart money is continuing to transact.
Yeah, right on. That always seems to be the way when the market is challenged, the smart money comes out and they were able to increase their position, right? So uh, this has been a great conversation here, Josh. I have a few last questions in rapid fire, and then we're going to wrap this up. You
Okay.
ready?
Yep.
All right. First question. I'm a big reader, love reading. I'm curious, what is your favorite book that's made the biggest impact in your career?
I'm reading The Big Print. It's not necessarily in my career, but on my like investing strategy. Essentially talks about capital markets, talks about where we're at in regards to the massive debt bubble that we're in right now, and what the future looks like for that. So, probably one of the most notable books I've read in a while. And if you like to understand what tomorrow holds in regards to the infinite level of money printing, this is a really good book.
Awesome. I'm going to pick that one up. That's perfect. Next one is people that know you best. What are three words that they would describe you as?
Ambitious. Um, say maybe kind and hard-headed. I'm Aquarius, and I think unfortunately, once I believe something, it's very difficult for me to change my perspective on things.
That's good. Sounds like a level five leader there. Ability to build into people, but also you do need to be. I found as a leader, if you really believe in the vision of where you're going to go as a company, it's like sometimes you got to go against the grain and just go after it. And ultimately you pay the price, right, if you get it wrong or right. But in general, if you have a gut feel, you got to go after that. So that's a very cool. So those are the three words. And then final piece of advice that you have for entrepreneurs that maybe they're thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, or maybe they're in it right now and they're looking to take their business to the next level.
Life is hard either way, whether you decide to make the jump or not. It's if life is going to be hard or difficult either way, you might as well go the path less traveled and live life on your own terms. So if you're thinking about it, just do it. Like the worst case that happens, it doesn't work out, and then you just try it again. And everybody's so stuck in their own life. No one actually, is judging you for taking control of your life. So, life is short. Make it happen. Do it. It's hard either way.
Amazing. That's great advice. Josh, what's the best way that the listeners can reach out to you? Maybe if they're looking to get some financing, primarily on multifamily, but anything to do with real estate, what's the best way they can reach out to you or your team?
Yeah, so I'll have my website maybe in the details below. Buildfinancial.ca. I'm pretty active on Instagram, jfins, jfins, and my firm posts BLD Financial. We post informational content just around multifamily acquisitions, construction development. So we're pretty active on social media. But if you wanted to shoot me a DM, I'm always available as well.
Amazing, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and congratulations on your massive success.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you like the show, you can go ahead and share and subscribe to the channel. And if you are interested in learning more about investing into real estate, you can go to fulloutinvesting.com. You'll see our 10-step full out investing process. There's also a sample deal there as well. Go to fulloutinvesting.com. Just remember, guys, the fastest way to build wealth is to grow your business and invest into real estate. I love you guys.